Recorded live at the 2022 NACDA Convention in Las Vegas, this is From the Chair. Here is your host, Mike Hamilton.
Welcome into this episode of From the Chair. I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. We are in Las Vegas at NACDA 2022, and this week we've had the good fortune of having the chance to actually sit live with some athletic directors versus our normal on-screen activity. So you'll see these broadcasts over the next couple of months, and really looking forward to the conversations that we're able to get to out here. And the guest today is University of Maryland Athletic Director, Damon Evans. Damon, thanks for being with me.
Hey man, it's great to see you. It's great to be with an old friend. We go way, way back, and anytime you call on me, I'm gonna be there.
Well, I'll worry about the old friend part. Is that how long we've known each other or just my age? Maybe a little bit of both, right?
I always tell people it's not age, it's just experience. We're more experienced now in life. I don't count it by numbers, so it's good to be with you.
Well, you know, we're talking offline, particularly being out here at NACDA, right? I mean, we were one of those young folks walking around the hallway many years ago, and it's interesting to now be, in your case anyway, an elder statesman and have everybody come up and talk with you. But thanks for spending a few minutes with me, and we've got 2 or 3 things we want to dive in on the air. And I told you I can't, obviously our friendship started when you were at University of Georgia. Mm-hmm. And when I think about the University of Georgia and your ascension to the AD chair there, the name Vince Dooley resonates strongly with me because of just the history that he had established at the institution as a national championship football coach, but also as a highly regarded and respected athletic director. So he was your mentor, your head coach, your friend, and I think that we need to honor our past before we talk about where we are today and our future. And Vince is one of those guys that I feel like we ought to just talk about for a few minutes and talk about maybe his impact on your life and what you saw in terms of his impact at University of Georgia and on the profession.
Vince Dooley, Coach Dooley, affectionately known as Coach Dooley, is just a tremendous individual. I remember the day when he came to my house in Gainesville, Georgia, and offered me a scholarship to attend the University of Georgia. And when you have a legend like that come in there, someone who's so revered around the country, the state, and the world of intercollegiate athletics, it was truly special. But to have the opportunity to play for him, but then he saw fit enough to say, hey, you want to come back and work with me at the University of Georgia? But when he brought me back in such a high-level position. At the age of 28 years old, he believed in me as a player, he believed in me as an employee, and he just taught me so much. So a lot of what I have achieved in my career, it has a lot to do with him, because without the opportunities that he gave me, I would not be sitting here with you.
Did you pick up any of his guarding skills?
You know what? It was interesting when I came back to meet with him. Yeah. And he'd be like, Damon, well, we got to talk about this position here. Come over to my house and we'll sit in the garden. So we have this interview and we're in his garden, and it is unbelievable. It is something I did not know about him, but I do remember this. They have a hydrangea named after him called the Dooley hydrangea.
How about that?
And so I learned a lot from him, and he's a history buff on the wars and things of that nature. So you got to be a sponge around individuals like Coach Dooley, because you can learn so much.
Well, you know, I'll tell you this, I can remember being in SEC meetings, and he was a guy that was not overly verbose in those meetings, but when he talked, he had something to say. You know, very thoughtful about the industry and about the University of Georgia and about the Southeastern Conference.
He really was. You know, it's interesting. I used to look back. I was fortunate enough he let me tag along with him to those meetings, and I learned so much. And you're sitting in the room with Vince Dooley, Frank Broyles, C.M. Newton, and some of all these people. But the one thing he always did, he was measured in his approach. He never got out in front of himself, but he always thought what was in the best interest of the University of Georgia and the SEC. And I'll tell you, he's one of the reasons, along with Roy Kramer and that group of ADs, why that conference is what it is today.
Yeah. One more question on Coach Dooley. So you came to Georgia from the SEC office, and is that correct?
No, I left the SEC, went to Missouri, then I went back to, you're right, and then I went back to the SEC, and then.
Man, I know your bio better
Yeah,
than
you know it better than I do. I get mixed up. Yeah, I did. I came from the SEC, that's right.
Yeah, so I knew Mizzou and the SEC, so that's the order. So you had that compliance background, right? And there was this, so when you came back to Georgia, you were largely initially in an internal facing role.
Yes.
But at some point you pivoted
Yeah.
and started doing more sports administration, external focus. Was that something that you sought out personally, or was that something you were sort of tapped on the shoulder and coach said, hey, if you're going to be an AD, these are the other skill sets you need to develop? How did that transpire?
It was interesting. I always wanted to learn more, and I told Coach Dooley, I said, whatever opportunity you give me, I'm going to take advantage of it. So every time something was happening, I told him I wanted to be an AD. What do I need to do to become an AD? So he started seeing that I had some abilities, I guess, and gave me opportunities to do things. And he just kept adding more and more opportunities. And when I look back, he was just layering things on top of one another, knowing that these were the things that I needed in order to achieve the goals that I had set for myself. And so I'm grateful for it, but I'm glad I got to pivot and I learned so much.
But you were there for a long time in Georgia, had tremendous success. And we've talked offline, the script as to how you might want to have written it didn't happen the way you want it to play out, but certainly we all have things that have come across our life's book, and we learn from those things. And so you were out of athletics for a while, and you moved to Massachusetts and was working in the for-profit sector. And I told you I wanted to just visit a little bit about that time away, as you're resetting personally and professionally, and very often you don't have the chance to do that. And I actually think it's helpful in some regards, right? I spent time in nonprofit for a while before coming back to work at Learfield, and the things I learned in those interim years I consider very formative to who I am today, right? So in your time away, 3 or 4 years in Boston, and then another 3 or 4 years in Charlotte before coming back on the campus. First, let's talk about your own personal and professional development outside of college athletics during those few years.
Well, it was tough when I had to leave, and I left, and it was all due to me. I always look, the first thing you have to accept and acknowledge of what happened, and you can't blame others. And then as I was out of it and you had a chance to reflect on it, as I was reflecting on it, we all think we know what leadership is. I read a lot of books on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. But when you have a situation like I had, it impacts so many other people, not just me. Family first and foremost, my family. Second, my colleagues, staff, the university. So many people were involved. So that was something I really had to reflect on when I was out of the business. And when I went into the for-profit sector, it was interesting because it was all about driving money to the bottom line. But what it did for me, it let me take that business perspective, try to apply where does that fit in the world of intercollegiate athletics. But at the same time, I had to work on myself. It wasn't one of those things where let's just try to jump back in. Take some time away, reflect. How do you build yourself back up? And the thing that I found, Mike, was this: relationships with individuals like you, Joe Castiglione, some other people out there, Gene Smith, that remained steadfast. Vince Dooley, the president at the University of Georgia, people remained steadfast. I learned from the relationships that I built. I knew at some point in time that might provide me the opportunity to get back in. But I had to make sure that family was taken care of. I had to make sure that I was ready and doing the right thing. And I had to lean on a lot of people and get a lot of advice from people because I knew I couldn't do this and try to make this climb back into this world without the help of others.
Well, and look, you're on a college campus, you're dealing with real life, real world experiences, right? And so the practicality of our experiences, you can speak in theory or you can speak in practice and from real world experience. And certainly you've got the ability to speak from a different perspective than you had before when, hey, you were this young guy hired to crown, so to speak, to be the guy at Georgia. So I think as hard as that probably was and is to reflect on, at the same time, it's your countenance reflects those lessons, right?
It really does. I sit here and say, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I hate that I had to go through that. But it made me a better person. It made me understand things. It gave me a whole new perspective. I was this young 34-year-old AD in the SEC, thought I knew everything, got outside my self. And so you don't want to have to go through those things, but life lessons really do help you. And it's interesting when I'm sitting down talking to student athletes about things now. I can sit there and I'll share, you know what, I've had some screw-ups, some significant screw-ups, and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to go through adversity, but it's how you handle that. And then don't point the finger at other people. Too many times we want to blame someone else for our downfall when we got to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what, that was all on me, and I put myself in that position. So I try to share my story as much as possible, and then to make sure that people can learn from me and that I'm continuing to grow and learn as an individual.
Yeah. So you had the experience in the for-profit sector, and then I would say you entered what I would call the shoulder industry, right? You started working with Ben Sutton, maybe some other things I can't remember, when you were living in Charlotte, and then that eventually led to the opportunity to get back on campus. You know, at what point did you feel like, okay, I am going to have a chance to get back on campus, not necessarily knowing that you were going to have the chance to sit in this chair, but the chance that you had to make your way back? And I assume, I mean, you knew all the pressures from being in a high-profile Power 5 AD job. So you still had an aspiration to do it, obviously. Walk me through that a little bit.
Well, you know what's interesting? I want to give out a shout out to Ben Sutton and a gentleman by the name of Mark Dyer.
Yeah.
I met Ben a long time ago when he had running ISP sports, and it was interesting because we shook hands on a multimedia rights deal. Just a gentleman, someone who was always there for me. And out of the blue called, said, you need to get back in, brother. You need to get back in.
Yeah.
And so he said, Mark Dyer called me, and I met with Mark Dyer and Ben Sutton and said, we want you to come work with us at IMG. And I said, hey, whoa. I thought about it, and I said, absolutely. So kudos to them, because that was my entree back into college sports. But as I started working with them a little bit, I got to go around the campuses, and I got that bug again. I started getting that scratch. I got that scratch. And then I stayed with them for a while. Then I got a little entrepreneurial and decided to try to launch a business with some partners that I had met, and we were going all over the country visiting with campuses, and that kind of led me back and got me into wanting to be back on campus. I had a couple offers from some ADs around the country to come work with them. At the time, I didn't feel it was right, and then the time felt right. And Maryland presented a great opportunity, and I'm just fortunate. Wallace Lowe, the president at that time, played a pivotal role in me being able to do the things that I've been able to do.
Two things there. Ben and Mark are fantastic folks. They're also dear personal friends of mine, and we are at the University of Georgia still living in that contract today at Learfield. So we're very appreciative of you having done that at the time. So you went to Maryland in 2014 and then became the athletic director in 2018.
Right.
And we were sharing the fact that, I told you I'm a North Carolinian by birth, and so I'm familiar with the old ACC, so to speak. So I was reflecting on the fact of Maryland being in the Big Ten now, and that coincided almost with the time that you went to College Park. And in some ways it seems longer than 8 years ago, but maybe not. How has the I can't even really call it, it's the transition makes it sound like it's something that just happened now, but how are you guys finding yourself in the league? Have you developed those rivals? What do you see continuing to evolve as it relates to, winning championships in the Big Ten?
I got there right after the transition took place, and I know our fans and alums and so many people were fond of the ACC. It's a great conference that's being headed up by our dear friend Jimmy Phillips. Yes. But it's been great for us. It really has. The financial aspect of the Big Ten is just unbelievable. Yeah. The multimedia rights deal that Jim Delaney was able to put together, that was a big part of it. But then the academic alliance within the conference is really, really good as well. But when I take a look at what we've been able to do, one of the challenges that you find, Mike, is it's hard to find rivalries. Because, those happen over a long period of time, or they're born out of in-state rivalries. So we don't have those natural rivalries. And it's when you go in there, you can't just pick and say, we want Penn State to be a rivalry. Yeah. Penn State's not looking at us going, we want Maryland to be a rivalry. Yeah. So it's going to take some time, but we've had a great deal of success. This is what I do know. Since we've been in the Big Ten, we won the third most Big Ten conference titles only behind Ohio State and Michigan. I think we're at a total of 45 right now.
Wow.
So we've shown that we belong, and we've won it in basketball, and men's and women's. We won them in lacrosse. We've won it in baseball. It's a great conference. Enjoying the opportunity to work with some great ADs and our new commissioner, Kevin Warren. So it's something that it seems like a lot longer. Maybe it's like dog years, as time goes by. But I think it was the right move for our institution. It seems to work out well for us.
So basketball is a big deal at the University of Maryland. And, you don't go into seasons anticipating midseason changes, right? But you and Coach Turgeon came to a mutual parting of ways in the middle of this past basketball season, and obviously now you've made your hire and are set on the course for continued success. And by the way, let's give Mark credit. Mark had success,
He
right?
had a great deal of success.
And so sometimes it's just time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about how you evaluate what it takes to be successful in Maryland basketball and what you see now coming from Kevin and what you anticipate there.
Maryland basketball is something special. When you go back and you take a look at individuals such as Lefty Driesell back in the day, and then going to Gary Williams, who won the national title, basketball is something that people have high expectations, the rich history and tradition. So I knew that when this all took place. I'll also say this, you mentioned it, Mark Turgeon did a good job at Maryland. We're maybe 2.5 years removed from a championship, a Big Ten championship, and then the tournament gets canceled, and the COVID year. But it was one of those things. Mark and I sat down and talked, and you've been in this business. You can kind of tell when it's just that time,
right?
And so we mutually agreed to move on, and I've been fortunate to find a guy in Kevin Willard out of Seton Hall. Wanted to hire a guy, Mike, that had a long track record, of proven success. There are a lot of times, we end up hiring people, they go out and they make a nice run in the tournament. Those are good hires too. But I was looking for that long track record, and I knew our people, I wanted a fit. And when I say fit, culture, we're we grind at Maryland. We're a little bit blue collar. I told people when we moved into the Big Ten, we moved into a more expensive neighborhood, and we have the poorest house in the neighborhood, so we got a lot of work to do. So we work hard. We're the blue-collar kids, you know. So when you come to Maryland, you're going to see the smokestacks and all that coming out. But got a good guy in Kevin Willard who fits our values, who's a great developer of talent, a great X's and O's guy, and he has a little bit of that Gary Williams in him. So it was hard, but especially the long runway to hire the coach. But I'm glad where we are today, and now he's undefeated, and he's just got to start winning.
Yeah, undefeated for sure. All right, so Transformation Committee. There's been a lot of conversation around the Transformation Committee over the last several months. It's interesting, most of the AD conversations I have, it's inevitable we talk about NIL, but there's this sort of thing that's just across the hilltop that's been talked about for now months, and that's the Transformation Committee and the work, and I think there's still a lot of speculation on where does all this land. You've been on the inside of this. You've been very engaged in NCAA issues your entire career. Give us some perspective from being sort of making the sausage a little bit with your role.
Well, I'm honored to serve on the committee. I mean, I think there's 21 of us. We got a monumental task ahead of us. We have to really be transformational. I think people are sitting back to wait and see what we're going to do. I think we better do something, because if we don't do it, as you've seen, Mike, there are others who will do it for us. There's Congress out there, the litigation that continues to happen and that we face. So we got to look at, okay, where are we from a rules perspective? Are the rules that we have defensible? We got to take a look at the financial structure that we have in place. Is that financial structure fair? Then we got to look and sit here and say this. Let's just be very, very candid. There are 358, I think, Division I institutions. We got to look at what we have in common, but we also have to look at what might be some of those differences. I don't want to take away student athletes' experience. Their experience is of utmost, and that experience includes, and at the forefront is the academic side. So how do we figure out a way to give everybody what they want? Because FBS, Power 5, what have you, may look at things a little bit different than some of the other conferences. So we're going to continue to, try to make the sausage, but I'll tell you it's a daunting task, because everybody wants to do the right thing, but always in that room there are people with opposing interests, because you get to that, got to protect mine, and how do we take care of each other. But I think we have to do something radical, Mike. I really, that's it. And I've said it in the meeting. We've got to do something that when we come out of here, that it may not look like we used to look, but it's okay if we maintain some of the same values that we've always had of education, broad-based sports camp programming, championship access. But from where I sit, we got to change.
You know, one of an athletic director who you and I know well made the comment to me, one of his greatest fears coming out of this is that it'll be an every man for himself type discussion, right? Even beyond conference association, you know, there's sort of been the family of the conference, right? But he said he has fears that as it relates to this particular subject matter, because of the potential for the wide disbursement of where all this could land, that it'll become an every school for themselves thing, and will the end result be the right result? And I'm not a proponent of not ever having change. I believe change is inevitable in life, but it's interesting to me, that comment, because there has been value in the association through conferences and the like. So I think it will be incumbent upon you guys as athletic directors and the presidents to figure out how do you align that work in the best way possible to protect as much as you can out of some of those traditions, but yet be looking towards the future, because it's got to change, right?
It has to change, but I think we've got to be very meticulous in it. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. There's a fear out there by a lot of people right now. Some saying we're not being transparent. We don't hear what's going on. It's going to be every man or woman for themselves. I go back and I say this, is that, you know, people say level playing field. We put all these rules in place for level playing field. To a certain extent, we've got that. But I want to remind everybody, but to a certain extent, the playing field's not level. I mean, if you look within our conference, I mean, there are budgets that range from $100 million to $250 million.
Yeah.
So those who have 250 and those who have 110, that's a different playing field. There are institutions with more resources than other institutions have. So I think that we got to understand that now. We've got to remember the rules that we have. You know, there may need to be some decentralization of those rules because they're not defensible. So again, I don't think we've got to make a decision. What are we willing to tolerate? What are we willing to fight for? Knowing that people are coming after us, and how do we maintain the core values of what we're about? And I think we can do that. I think we can do that, but do I think that might happen in a different manner? Like they always say, there's so many different ways to skin a cat or to get to where you want to go. And I think we're going to have some different ways of getting to where we all want to be.
All right, so I'm reading a book now about leadership and team, and it's about John Bacon, who's a writer in Detroit. He coached the high school's most unsuccessful high school hockey team and the transition with that. But one of his quotes this morning I was reading was something along the lines of, the Navy SEALs and the Peace Corps have a waiting list. And the reason they have a waiting list is because it's about mission, not about a job. And I think that really resonated with me, right? So what about this work? I mean, this is a hard job you're in, right? It's a hard job you're in. You're paid well, but it's a hard job you're in. So what makes this a mission for you as athletic director at the University of Maryland?
The student athletes. I'm a former student athlete. So think about this. When you take a look at someone like me, I would have gone to college, but it would have been to a junior college. My parents wouldn't have been able to afford to send me to school, but I always knew I was going to go to college. That was, hey, that's what you're going to do, and if we have to go this route, that's the route that we go. And it provided a great opportunity. So when you start talking about mission and purpose, the purpose in this is that we get to work with young people each and every day. They come in as freshmen thinking that they know everything, and we get to help them grow and develop. And we get to bring joy not only to their lives, but to the lives of all of our different constituents. So when you asked me earlier, why did I want to get back in? It was still, I wanted to be a part of that mission. I wanted to be a part of that purpose of helping to educate young people, develop young people. And I just am a sports fanatic. College football, basketball, baseball, tennis, those things are just so special. And we take those memories, and people, when they're sitting over in their jobs in accounting firms or whatever, you know what they're doing? They're talking about what we're doing every day. People are paying to do what we get to go sit on the baseline or the sideline or in the suites, and people will pay astronomical amounts of money, and you and I have been going free for I don't know how long. So
A while.
I like free.
I had to pay for a while, by the way.
You've never paid. Free is good, so it's a good business.
Yeah. All right. Last question, just for fun. You're the AD at Maryland, but you live in the District of Columbia. You live in D.C. What's your favorite part about living in D.C.?
It's interesting. I like walking around. My wife and I, we like going to all the restaurants. We can walk to the grocery store, workout place. But you know what? Being around all the history. When we'll walk down by the White House, we'll walk over to the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Monument, all the different museums there, and it's such a melting pot. The diversity in the district is unbelievable, and so we've enjoyed that aspect of it. We live in a small apartment now. We live the apartment life. Gone from these big houses, this little apartment, and
empty nester.
Empty nester. So we really like it. So I'm just honored to be at the University of Maryland and still be in this profession and to have relationships with people like you, my friend.
Same here, man. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, brother. It's always good to be with you.
Likewise. All right, folks. This is Damon Evans, University of Maryland. I'm Mike Hamilton from the chair. We'll see you next week.